Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
It's a nice warm morning today. No, I was going to say that.
I don't know, nice, but you know, it has been really hot.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say next. That I know we're going to get into the weather a little bit later on, but I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, based on how things have been going since the weekend, that's like the first thing that I'm worried about as I step out of my house now.
Yeah. No, it is. It's been very warm, and I know the Met Service has been trying to keep people cognizant of the fact that you have to take an extra effort to stay hydrated when it does get warm like this. It does get typically very hot in April, and we're seeing that.
Yep.
And what we have on the coast doesn't compare to what people are feeling inland.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I was in Cayo this weekend, and you know, I definitely checked my phone, and I saw the temperature was over 100 degrees, and then you know, you scroll down, and you see that feels like and it was like feels like 113. So yeah.
All right. So definitely, we can start off with that reminder. It looks like it's gearing up to be another warm day. So remember to stay hydrated. If you can stay out of the sun, that's ideal. And stay in the shade. If you're going to be outdoors, cover up properly and check in on the elderly and the young ones. Make sure they're drinking enough water as well.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. But of course, it is a Tuesday morning, and you know, there's quite a bit going on in Belize. But I know we have been, all eyes, I should say, have really been on St. Vincent and what's been happening there.
Yes, absolutely. So we are able to confirm that this morning the La Soufrière volcano, which is on St. Vincent, of course, it did have experienced another eruption. As you see, we've got footage of that coming right out of St. Vincent. We know that they've experienced a series of pretty violent eruptions over the past few days. It is an extremely scary situation. I mean, looking at that footage just from here, it looks, I can't imagine what it must be like. To be on the island, as you know, they're experiencing huge amounts of ash and smog, and of course also of the fumes that the volcano is releasing. And it's of course affecting some of the nearby islands, Barbados most significantly, also getting a lot of ash and some of the deposits from that volcanic eruption. We also want to say that video is from Chantel Mackenzie Williams out in St. Vincent, so we want to thank her for providing that first video, but of course our thoughts are with them, and you know, we know that they are experiencing some power outages, and you know, I don't know what it must be like to live through a natural disaster like that.
Yeah, you know, and it's always interesting when you think of those communities that live near to what they consider to be inactive or dormant volcanoes. You know, you live the majority of your life thinking, oh, it's never going to happen. It's never happened in my lifetime or my parents' lifetime. So it really does feel like such I would imagine it feels like a far fetched idea that it would eventually lead to another eruption, and that's what we see there. We've seen it in other countries. We've seen it in Guatemala as well, where suddenly something that seemed, the volcano that may have been dormant, just suddenly gains the energy and leads to this eruption. It is a very scary time, and it's been interesting to see how the support is coming in. We should make a note of saying that there are relief efforts happening within Belize where you can donate towards helping our Caribbean brothers and sisters on St. Vincent. Of course, many of them had to pick up and leave. The cruise ships came in to help with evacuations, to take them to other islands, and they're going to need a lot of help to be able to recover from this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we can't always we can't forget, of course, that St. Vincent and the Grenadines are like us in the Caribbean, and they of course experienced a lot of the negative impacts of the loss of tourism due to the pandemic. So I can't imagine what it must be like to already have experienced so much since the beginning of last year, and then to now deal with a natural disaster of this scale. I recall I've visited St. Vincent and the Grenadines before. It's a beautiful island, of course not very big. So, when you think about the impact that something like this has on an island of that size, it's massive. And, as Marlene rightly pointed out, the relief efforts are starting. But as we can clearly see, this is still an active situation, which we and everybody else are going to keep monitoring. And our thoughts are with everyone who is on the island and who's experiencing some of these effects from the volcano, and we hope that as I think the last that I read is that most of the volcanic dome has already been destroyed. So I'm not sure what that means in the grand scheme of things, but I hope that means that some of the eruptions, or at least the violence of them, is going to be is going to decrease over the past few days. Next few days, sorry. And
like I said, the perspective here is, and they had been getting a little bit of activity, I think, in the past few months. And while you can always prepare, it's like when we got tsunami warnings, it's such a far-fetched idea for us, because it's something that we never considered we'd have to face. And like I said, in the case of St. Vincent, the last eruption was in the 70s.
79, I think.
Yeah, so it really does. It's like all of a sudden here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and we have to get up and leave. What do you take? You would know what to take. You don't know where to go. You don't know what you'll return to find.
Yeah.
So it must be a really scary time for them. We do encourage you that if you are in a position where you can offer some assistance, the Belize Red Cross and other agencies, they are putting together relief efforts. Many times when we face natural disasters or Caribbean brothers and sisters offer support as well. These are the similar type of efforts that take place on the islands and in other countries. And so it is important that we also do the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, but of course we'll keep you updated as to what's happening there. You can always check out the newscast at 6 p.m. tonight, and it's live on Channel 5, on Facebook, and on YouTube. We got to get moving into our show for today, and that means some motivation to get us going, right?
Yeah.
And that means it's time for our eye opener, and our eye opener is taken from dailyom.com, and it goes like this. When we include our friends in the full story of our life, we build authentic relationships in which we can be who we truly are. When we're going through a difficult time, we may hesitate to call even our best friends because we don't want to burden them with our troubles. This can be especially true if we've been going through a series of challenges and we're starting to feel as if we sound like a broken record. It is important to remember that at times like these, our friends sincerely want to be there for us whenever they can. Without our friends, we would be hard-pressed to get through the tough times and celebrate the good ones. If we leave our friends out of our process when the going gets tough, our friendships can begin to feel shallow. On the other hand, when we include our friends in the full story of our life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we build authentic relationships in which we can be who we truly are. When we do this, we invite our friends to bring their whole selves to the relationship as well.
That's a great eye opener, and and it's funny because I was thinking, and it flowed very well. Just thinking from the topic of the volcano and the help that the Caribbean community gives to each other during natural disasters, because it is an act of friendship in several ways. And I think that, more specifically referring to what this is talking about, is that when we do allow ourselves to, really open up and we share, some of our deepest troubles and stuff, that really creates for really meaningful and deep relationships and really long-lasting ones, because then you can really see, or you could surprise yourself sometimes, because just like what the eye opener says, sometimes you think that, oh, I don't want to burden somebody with all of my problems, or I don't want to feel like, I'm going through this and I have to solve it by myself. And you don't, first of all, just telling somebody and just talking about it can help a lot in the first place. Just letting that out and having somebody there for you is definitely one of the best things, just as a first step. And then second of all, whether it's just that comfort or whether it's advice, what sharing that experience with somebody can do is definitely, 9 times out of 10, it creates a much better situation for yourself. And you have to get over that thing in yourself that self-consciousness, which you really shouldn't have, if it's a really deep and meaningful friend. But I know we all do. But the benefits definitely outweigh anything that you could be scared of. And I think that most of the time what you're scared of is just in your mind, right?
No, I think that the beginning of the eye opener really nails it. It's not sometimes, we build friendships, and especially if you're able to sustain them over time, you have adapted to being able to kind of share some of the good moments, some of the bad ones. But there are times when things get really difficult that you do feel like a broken record. You feel like, oh no, I can't call them again to say the same thing again, and occupy their time. And I've been on both ends of this, and I do know, it's interesting when you think about it, that you are when your friend is in a crisis, when someone you care about is in a crisis, you want to hear from them. Even if just to hear that they're still trying to push through whatever challenge that it is. And it should be the same on the other end. That's the foundation of being able to have solid relationships, is having that sense of openness and authenticity to be yourself. And you are not always experiencing joy or in a calm place. We all have challenging times, and being able to share that is really the meaning behind that friendship. It means that you have someone to share the burden of the tough times, and then you have people to help to multiply the joy that you have. And then all, the kicks and giggles in between. So it's such an important point, and it really encourages a scenario where you can be able to be more thoughtful, because then when you start to realize that even when your friend looks A-okay, there are tough things going on, and you start to realize that that might be other people as well going through tough times, that you start to have that sense of kindness towards others as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, it's interesting that as you were talking, I was also reminded, and the eye opener did mention this as well, that people are scared of sounding like broken records. And I think that one of the other things to note from that is that a lot of the times you might actually be in sort of a rut, and you don't realize that hearing that other perspective might be the best thing to take you out of it. Because quite often, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have, is that like maybe that if you do have that conversation, your friend can be the one to point out, you've been talking about this for too long, or you need to get over this, or maybe not in those words.
Hopefully not.
But they can be the ones to give you that little push that will help you move forward or move past whatever it is that you're going through. So, while, you can be scared of having a negative reaction, and 9 times out of 10 it won't be, I think, if it's somebody who's really there for you. But, if they are somebody who's there for you, then they can also be the type of person to give, really good perspective, sometimes even tough love, and help get you through it. And you have to trust people enough who are close to you that they'll have your best interests at heart. So, it's hard, but you have to try.
And you'd be surprised how sometimes just vocalizing what you are experiencing does a lot for you as well.
Yes.
And that's part of what's important about it, that you can just say what you're feeling, help yourself to identify what it is that's going on, and you have a great comfort in a trusted listening ear.
Yeah.
All right, so that is the eye-opener for today. Feel free to reach out to those friends and check in on them as well, especially if you know it's tough for them to talk through whatever they're going through. But we got to get moving into our weather for today, and we have on the line Angelia Guy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing great. Let's get into our forecast for the morning. What can we expect in terms of our general situation?
Okay, well, early this morning, continuing to now, we have a bit of cloudy skies, but we expect that to clear up and warm up during the day. Should continue similarly hot to the past couple of days.
Okay. And over the next 24 hours?
Okay, we expect skies to be mostly sunny today, with the chance of an isolated thunderstorm developing over the mountains this afternoon. And then skies to be clear to partly cloudy tonight, with the chance of isolated showers or isolated thunderstorms over the extreme south of the country tonight.
Okay. And our winds?
Okay, winds will be from the east and southeast at 10 to 20 knots, with occasionally higher gusts.
And let's talk about the temperatures, those highs.
Okay, well, it will continue on the more hot side, but it should be a little less hot compared to the past couple of days. For comparison, yesterday temperatures reached at about 104 degrees in the Chalk Creek area. We expect the maximum temperatures to reach about just under 100 degrees, about 98 degrees today inland, and then 89 along the coast and 84 in the hills.
And when it gets a bit cooler tonight?
No, it will continue on the warm side tonight. Temperatures will range from about 81 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 75 inland, 68 in the hills.
Okay, and our outlook as we head into the middle of the week?
Continuing warm and dry weather.
And finally, in light of all of this heat, can you let us know about any advisories or watches that you might have for us?
Sure. We still have a heat alert in effect for residents, especially inland. We advise them to stay hydrated and to keep away from direct sunlight as much as possible. We also have a small craft caution in effect for the occasionally gusty winds and rough seas.
Okay. Well, Angelia, thank you so much for giving us that forecast.
You're welcome.
Right. I hope you have a great day and stay cool.
Thank you. Too.
All right. Bye. Yeah.
And there you have it. It's going to be another hot one today. So please stay indoors if you can. And if you're on the seas too, please watch out too, as there is a small craft caution, as there might be some rough seas today.
That's right. Okay, so that's what we can expect in terms of our weather. And we're going to get moving into our show for today, and we're starting off with a conversation.
We are speaking with the Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, and we're going to get an update on all that's happening in the tourism industry and what we can hope for in the future. That's going to be our first conversation for this morning.
All right, and the second part of our show, we are in the middle of our vaccination rollout here in Belize. I believe there are about 27,000 people who have at least gotten the first dose of their vaccine, and we're going to get some more information about vaccines in general. There are some concerns and people do have questions, so we're going to have an immunologist join us to talk about what we need to understand about vaccination.
And finally, we are going to be speaking about an event to raise awareness for several different types of brain disorders and conditions. And we're going to be hearing all about the walk run to raise awareness about all of this in our final conversation for this morning.
All right. So with that, we're going to get ready to move into our show, but we got our birthday shout out for today, and we're saying happy birthday to
We've got two birthdays today. We are saying happy birthday to Aisha Rudan and Noli Avila. So to both Aisha and Noli, thank you thank you. happy birthday. We hope that you have many more. And from all of us here at Open Your Eyes and Channel 5, we wish that you have a great day. Yep. And with that, of course, we are going to be taking our first break. And when we come back, we are going to be speaking with the Honorable Anthony Mahler, the Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
Why, Tony?
Why, kid, what you going on, man?
I actually come see you because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just routed the last batch, must be about like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? What you going on?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we are just getting our first conversation for this morning started. And we are joined by the Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, the Honorable Anthony Mahler. And we're going to be getting an update all on what is going on in the tourism industry and a bit more for what we can expect for the future this morning. So, Minister, good morning.
Morning everybody. Morning, Belize.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Of course, the tourism industry, of course, has been at the front of a lot of discussions over the past year, especially in the context of the impact of COVID-19. So we are about a year, a little more than a year after the onset of the pandemic, and especially how it's been affecting Belize. So let's start off by just generally discussing how things are today and where we've come from.
Well, as you all know, the travel and tourism industry has been the hardest hit industry of all globally. It's not only a Belize issue, it's a global issue. If you look at big destinations like Italy, France, all of those destinations are suffering as well, especially for the small and medium enterprises that don't have the cash flow to weather a storm like this one. Usually the big guys are the ones who can handle it a little bit more. But even if you look at the airline industry, there has been a lot of airlines that have gone belly up. There are a lot of hotel brands around the world that are struggling or that have filed for bankruptcy. And so Belize is just a microcosm of what you've seen around the world. You ask where we are today. It's 10 times better as you compare to a year ago when everything was locked down and zero tourists were coming in. As you all know, the airport was open in October, but the borders are still closed, and the border crossings for tourists represent about 20% of the arrivals. So you're talking about 100,000 and just over 100,000 people per year. But the airport is the main hub for people coming into the country, and we've seen a gradual growth. In October, we saw just under 2,000 people, then November just over 3,000, and December closer to 5, and then or President Biden, I should say, and Prime Minister Trudeau said what they said, and people stopped traveling for that month, and then we saw a drop in January and February, but then March we saw a nice uptake compared to where we were. So it's in March we were seeing closer to 15,000 arrivals. But the great thing over the last year, the industry has seen how important the Belizean market is. And so other than San Pedro, other destinations you see mainly or a good combination of international visitors and local travelers or Belizean travelers.
Now, you said that in March you registered 15,000. That's
Somewhere,
how does that compare to what you would typically see at that time?
Well, you're talking about 30% or so, 25-30%. So maybe March in 2019 we're going towards about 60,000 in arrivals, which is pretty good.
Now, when you look at when you were designated the portfolio of tourism and diaspora relations, it was a month after the airport opened. It was a really tough time in terms of the battle of COVID that we were facing here locally. In going in, what was your plan in being able to kind of get your proper footing and navigating us out of this uncharted territory?
Well, when we opened the airport in October, like you said, it was just a few weeks after we won the election. We had some months under our belt in terms of living with COVID. And yes, you're right, at that time COVID was raging in Belize. But we in Cabinet and within the People's United Party, we had a plan in terms of trying to get as many tests out. More testing was done at the time. We had some few months with the gold standards already in terms of tourism, and so we knew what to do at that time, pretty much. And so it was a combination of what we did in tourism and what we did in health, and so we felt comfortable in opening the airport. Sorry, we felt comfortable that the airport you wouldn't see an uptake in COVID cases coming through the airport, just how it was being managed.
Now, looking at the strategies that you have undertaken so far, first of all, you went out and you tried to meet with as many stakeholders as you can.
I'm still doing so. So I have a few destinations that I have to visit.
And what are some of the things that you're picking up from the ground?
Well, a lot of people are hurting. Cash flow is the main issue. And so we have to look at that seriously, how we can help those people that are struggling to pay their bills. And what I saw in some of the bigger destinations, especially on the north side of Hamburg, is that there are a lot of properties that aren't open still. And so, you know, if you're not open, if you're pretty much abandoned, then maintenance issues come into effect. And so when you want to reopen, then you have to invest monies in getting your property ready or your businesses ready for your reopening. And so those are some of the things people are talking about, how they can get marketing dollar into the key markets. And right now the key market is primarily United States. Europe is a long ways off, and even Canada with their travel restrictions. And so marketing, training, the same basic things, some of the infrastructure needs. Like when I went out to San Pedro, I hadn't been out there for some time, and I found it, I was amazed that at 6 o'clock in the evening, right now during COVID, that they have water issues. And so some basic infrastructural issues that go into making a product a first-class destination, we have to address those.
Now, from your analysis so far, what's been the percentage of permanent closures?
I would say around 15%.
Wow.
10 to 15%.
And the plans for these businesses?
I believe that there will be some consolidation in the industry or some acquisitions. I believe that some of the bigger players within Belize and abroad would come in and buy up some properties. Now, from talking to the good folks over at the central bank, you're talking about somewhere about $1 billion of loans that had to be restructured over the last year or so. Of that $1 billion or more, I think it's 1.1 billion, somewhere around there. You're talking about 1/3 being okay, 1/3 being iffy, and then 1/3 being, so if you're talking about 1/3 of $1 billion, you're talking about $333 million worth of loans that, we did a survey to find out, and that's how I could tell you about 10 to 15% of the businesses may or may not return.
Yeah. Now,
if they return, they may return under different management, different ownership, that type of.
And that's the tricky part that we don't discuss very often, because we start to see businesses, we start to see tourists trickle in, and some destinations report, they're very happy with the growth that they're seeing, but the recovery of the past year is what we don't put into context. So we're talking about 60% of $1 billion that people will need to take whatever they get to catch up to speed.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point and question. So when people ask me about the recovery, yes, we'll be able to see some demand from people wanting to come to Belize, but there's also a supply side of the industry. And how does it look? How many restaurants will be open? How many tour operations will be open? How many hotel rooms will we have? Belize overall, pre-COVID, has or had about 9,000 rooms, of which I'd say 4,500 or 5,000 of them would be considered export ready for people who want to come into Belize and experience the wonders of our country. Now, will that look like 8,000? Will that look like 7,000? Will that look like 9,000? We're still going through the numbers, talking to people to see what will happen. Right now, I could tell you we have maybe about 550 or so hotels that have met the gold standard requirements and that have been certified as gold standard ready. And before, we had about 900 properties registered on the books at the BTB. So you still have probably 1/3 not being gold standard ready.
So when you look at what is happening at this time, the tourists start to come back, the properties, they start to get some business again. Has there been a conversation made about how to be able to settle on the debt that they've probably accrued over the past year, and how much of it goes back into the business and especially in employment? Because we know the devastating effects that the closure of tourism had on employment.
Well, one of the first things that I did was to establish a tourism recovery task force.
Yeah.
And we looked at all aspects of the business, of the industry, and we developed, with help of private sector and public sector people, we developed, I believe, a very good tourism recovery strategy and stabilization document. I presented that to Cabinet a few weeks ago, and it was approved. And so now the implementation starts. So we're looking at, for example, we have some monies for micro and small enterprises, some grants through the IDB that we'll be helping people with to try to get back their small and micro enterprises ready for business as we reopen. And we also have looked at the marketing side of things, how we will revamp the entire marketing program, because I think it wasn't tailored specifically based on numbers that we're looking at. So it wasn't data driven enough for me. So right now, I believe that digital marketing is very important. I think that creates some level playing field at this time, and so that we can go pound for pound with the big boys who have tens of millions of dollars compared to us. We're also looking at how we can talk to, for example, the utility companies to say give the industry a discount or something like that to go into their businesses. And an important part of this recovery is how do we get back to the capacity that we have here in the industry. So we're talking to the airlines. Southwest is still on the table. We're talking to them as much as we could. And they represent 25% of the capacity coming into Belize. So getting them back is very critical because they keep the legacy carriers honest in terms of pricing and getting to Belize. And one of the complaints has always been that Belize is an expensive destination to get to. And so we're talking to other airlift or airlines out of the West Coast. We're talking to a big one from Europe and some other parts of the world. So
how many carriers do we have scheduled right now coming in?
We have United, Delta, American. Copa is going to come back in June or July, somewhere around there. Hopefully we can get Southwest back in.
Now, how much has this changed the marketing strategy, not with the outlets that you use, but who you target?
Well, right now the primary market, instead of spreading it globally, it's primarily the United States, right? That's the low-hanging fruit, and that's, I believe, at this point we need cash flow, so we need as many people coming in as possible. I believe we'll see a little bit of a growth in April. Hopefully the numbers don't taper off down the second half of the month, but I believe we'll see a growth in April compared to the almost 15,000 we got in March.
And what about investment in the tourism industry from private enterprises, whether foreign, which usually we think of tourism as being a huge source of foreign investment, or even locally? What sort of conversations are being had about that right now, and what we can look forward to?
Well, the Ministry of Investment has been talking to people out there, serious investors wanting to come to Belize. I know there's one coming into Belize to meet me on Thursday. You just want to see the lay of the land, and they have some significant monies behind them, so maybe we'll see something come out of that. But just in terms of the recovery of the industry, we're looking at a long stay program for people wanting to travel into Belize. We're looking at a Belizean traveler program, so a local campaign. Usually the local campaign is geared towards peaks, right? So Easter season, we do a campaign during summer months, but the campaign that we want to do is all year round, because now the industry realizes that the local market can help the bottom line. And so
COVID for them to realize that.
Right. Yeah. So usually they skin up their nose on the Belizean. Now they see how important the Belizean traveler is. So for example, we're making some adjustments to the Hotels and Tourist Accommodation Act that gives the minister or the registrar the power to adjust the hotel tax. And so for Belizeans, during this campaign, we'll drop the hotel tax from 9% to maybe about 5% or so.
That's helpful, because that's part of the costs associated that we pay.
The same thing, we're looking at when the industry returns to about 75 or 80% of where it used to be, we're contemplating giving the industry hotel sector a rebate, so maybe 2 percentage points back to them to help them with some cash flow. The Prime Minister has, I guess, garnered about $50 million, and that should be within process through either the DFC or the National Bank for people to get low interest loans going forward to help them with some bridge financing or for their investments going into their businesses, whether it be this hotel sector or the tour operations or gift shop or restaurant, you name it. If you have a private attraction. But we just hope that there's no new variant, there's nothing, a new major spike that we're seeing in certain parts of the United States that would, because we can do, like for example, the marketing was beginning to turn over properly and get into form, and then January came and Biden said what he said and Trudeau said what he said. And
that's what I was going to ask. Has there been lobbying beyond with other ministries in being able to kind of remove the status that we have? We're doing very well in Belize at this moment. We can't get complacent. But when people look up a destination and still see warnings about whether or not to travel, they have an impact, especially if they're not return guests.
Well, the CDC had us on level 4, and people say, oh, it's Belize there. No, they just put out a blanket statement because that's easier for them to do, right? Rather than taking the time and say, this country is this country is that. But due to our lobbying, I think it has gone down to level 3 now. And as we get better here in Belize and as we control it or keep controlling it, then the status of those levels would go down significantly as well. The same thing with the State Department, with the travel advisors, as it relates to crime and that type of thing. We're talking to them to see how they can adjust that because the crime has gone down significantly over the last year or so.
Let's focus for a moment on how the impact of these regulations also pose a challenge for the industry as well. We've talked very often with the Minister of Health as well as the Minister of Home Affairs, and the collaboration that you must have with them is the same.
Yes.
We need to maintain safety in the country first.
That's right.
But what's your position on being able to kind of have some adjustments made to ensure that when people visit on vacation, they have a comfortable stay?
Well, people don't, there's what is called pent-up demand, right? People are tired of being locked in, and that's why you see riots all around the world. People want to let loose. They want to, the cry is now that we have to learn to live with this thing. We don't know how long it will last. But I believe that even when the airport was open and COVID was raging, nobody wanted to come, or a few would take the risk to come. So I think the priority should be on health and safety, and that is going to be a new part of the operations of the tourism industry. And a lot of businesses, or a lot of sector, or a lot of industries, and health and safety have to be incorporated into whatever plans you have going forward. Without that, people will not come, or few will come, especially the demographic that we see coming to Belize. I don't think if we didn't control it the way we did, the numbers would still be low.
Yeah. And from what we're telling so far from our exit surveys, is it mostly return guests that are coming?
No, a combination.
Okay.
People who own condos who wanted to just see our homes here in Belize, they're a part of the people coming, but we have people coming to Belize for the first time.
There's no lack of interest from investors either.
No, I believe towards the latter part of this year we'll see another big spike in terms of arrivals. I just saw a report from the airlines, the airline sector yesterday, and for the first time they've started to rehire or hire new pilots, new flight attendants, new people working in that industry. And they're talking about during the summer they're running at about close to 100% of where they were pre-COVID. And so that's a good signal for us.
And what about the return or hope for return for things like cruise tourism?
Cruise, now, I think that's, there's some politics being played by the administration, whether it was the Republicans or now the Democrats. Most of the cruise lines, as I understand it, they aren't flagged in the United States, so a lot of their taxes aren't paid in the United States. Now, if you look at a big entity like Carnival, for them to survive, they need $1 billion a month, right? And there has been no cruise for over a year. Now, the CDC has been very stern on the cruise industry, and they're the ones controlling or dictating the pace. So there was a no sale, now there's a conditional sale order, and now the cruise lines are lobbying for there to be a lift, that there's a lift for the conditional sale order, and that right now the cruise lines can't sail out of the United States. So, for example, Norwegian Cruise Line has no home port.
So you fly to another country and start your cruise there.
Right. So they're doing Jamaica, and so in August, the Norwegian Joy, I believe it is, will be coming to Harvest Key, and it looks like they're going to be the first ones to come in. Now, hopefully, we have other cruise lines coming in before that, but in terms of requests from a cruise line, Norwegian is the first to do so here in Belize, and they're slated for August.
August.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the development of the cruise tourism industry locally. We know there's much conversation about port and port developments. What's your stance on this?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Ports and port development.
Yes. Well, first of all, the bottom line is we need a port. The cruise lines have said that they're tired of tendering, and that's an additional cost and time for them that could be spent, the people could be spent here, monies that can be spent, and people, the time that they could spend here in Belize doing something that they can make money off of. Now you have 3 players, Stake Bank out there that has significant investment in the ground already. You have Waterloo and Port of Magic a little bit outside of Belize City here. Honestly, I don't believe, I know that the industry cannot absorb 3 big ports like that. We just don't have the numbers coming to this part of the world to facilitate 3 ports of that size. And so I believe market forces will play, and the investors will look at what's going on, and at some point they're going to say, well, this doesn't make sense. So we are saying that we're going to create an enabling environment for any investor to come in, to be efficient, to look at their investment and to say whether it is going to be feasible for them or not. And that is our position now.
Now, the industry has always been...
sorry, one more thing. What I can tell you is, as Minister of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, I would never support, and I'm sure the Prime Minister would never support, the dumping of any material out at sea. That's not going to be tolerated.
And that's a critical point. You know, when you talk about some of the analysis that takes place before any development is approved, it seems that the information, it comes out, I think, in piece, but how involved are you in the decision-making process?
Well, what we did was to form a cabinet committee of different ministers, and we're looking at all the projects and doing a cost-benefit analysis for the country.
There has always been a need, and I know that before there was a change in administration, the prior government spoke very often of how important it was that Belize move away from tendering, because there would come a point where cruise ships would no longer want to come to the country if they have to tender.
Well, I don't know. We've been coming here for over 20 or 30 years tendering, and so Belize is a prime destination for tours. They make a significant amount of money off tours. You have a high disembarkation rate, so a lot of people come off the cruise ship and then they go on their tours. And so even though it's not the best scenario for them to tender, I don't think that they would stop coming to Belize because they're tendering. Now, the thing is, when you have a lot of people who are up in age and a northeasterly is blowing, or it can be dangerous for them to disembark. And so that's what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to just maximize their efforts now, especially now. Like I said, Carnival Corporation needs about $1 billion a month to survive, and they've had 0 revenues for the last 13 months or so. They will have to do everything to recoup the investments. What they're doing, you're seeing in the cruise sector, is that they're decommissioning a lot of their smaller ships and going towards bigger ships. And so if the CDC or any governmental agency tell them that they have to operate at 50%, that they would have enough people in there to make a decent amount of money off of.
When do you imagine? So we have Norwegian who should resume coming to Belize in August. What about the rest? What's the timeline for that?
We're talking to the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, and there's an operational committee that we meet with once a month at least. And so they were saying at the end of May, June, they want to see, but some of them. Now, remember that the logistic is to get people from all around the world to get into those cruise lines to work, right? And so that's what that's a part of their logistical nightmare, to get their staff into wherever they're going to home port from to work. And so that's another issue for them. But they're working on that. They're experienced at that, so they'll do so.
So let's take a moment to break away from that and talk about some of your housekeeping that you've had to deal with since you came into office. And of course, the first thing on everyone's mind is looking at BTB and the situation you faced there with Karen Bevans. What is the update today? Has she been replaced?
Not yet. We'll go through due process, and the board will make a decision.
Some people view the decision by this administration to go in, meeting the contract that they did, as a targeted effort to get her out. Was there a settlement made on this issue?
No, that's going to be going to court, and so I can't say much about the Karen Bevans issue right now. But it's going to court.
And how do you keep, I mean, you have currently the chairman acting as the leader of the institution. How does this dynamic work?
Well, it has been done all over the world, whereby the chairman is the CEO for a short period of time. We don't expect it for it to be a long time. And so hopefully by the end of April we can get that all squared out.
And what have your audits of the BTB revealed so far?
The preeminent organization had a culture problem. It was detached from the industry for the most part, and that the marketing was skewed in the wrong direction and had to be refocused, and that the BTB itself had to become more in tune with the needs of the industry. And so even though you saw an organic growth, it could be much better.
Yes, but going back to the financial health of the BTB at this time.
BTB is healthy now. Now, as a result of COVID, we lost a significant amount of money, right? So instead of making $30 million for the year, I made like, I think, $3 million. So, and you saw a $10 million loss. For this fiscal year, we've had to curb that, and so you're still seeing a loss, but it's more manageable. But in terms of abuse or anything like that, I haven't seen anything as yet.
No.
And the audits are ongoing still.
Okay. Now, I want to, you know, when you look at what happened and the quickness with which BTB had to lay off people after the impact of COVID, it clearly showed that there wasn't much contingency for these types. Nobody could predict this, but it could have been a hurricane that shut down the tourism sector. What's the plan moving forward? I mean, we all global experts have said, you know, pandemics may become more frequent. We may even face another outbreak with variants and have the same shutdown again. What's the contingency planning moving forward?
Well, whenever we get back to full capacity, and there has to be a contingency part of the budget, or the budget has to have a contingency plan, and I strongly believe in that. And so I've expressed that to the chairman to say going forward that there has to be a contingency plan. But I think how the finances were being managed, that they had enough cash flow to survive the period of time. So I don't know why they rushed to fire at the time 50% of the people who are the most senior and more experienced people. In wartime, you need your war generals, right? Your people who have been tested and proven throughout time. And you say about hurricanes and all that. Well, when I was at the BTB, we went through, I think, about 3 or 4 hurricanes. We went through SARS. We went through I think Ebola, 911. And so a lot of things that put some serious strain on the tourism industry. But we were able to rebound, and we were able to do great things after that. And just like COVID, I think now what COVID has done is to teach or to allow people to learn to be more efficient, to be more innovative, to diversify in their own little business, whether it's tourism or otherwise. And so they say necessity is the mother of invention, and that's true to form here. And I believe that we will have a more resilient tourism industry after this, because none of those things that I listed off before, none of those things brought the industry to a screeching halt like COVID did. And COVID has been compared to, or the economy now, for many countries, the economies have been compared to what they experienced during the Great Depression, but I say it's worse because the Great Depression was a financial issue. COVID is a health issue where people are dying and getting extremely sick, and then that translated and rolled over into becoming an economic crisis. And even before COVID, we had seen like 2 or 3 quarters of negative growth, which is in recession already. And COVID just made that worse. And so we're on the brink of a depression. If you look at all the key indicators, unemployment, lack of foreign exchange, investment into the country, tax revenues, if you look at all those things are significantly down. And so as an administration, we have to take a step back, look at everybody, no special interest. We have to look at an entire country here and say, what can we do to improve the quality of life for our country in the short term, medium term, and long term?
You know, the People's United Party, when you were in opposition, you know, you spoke, your Prime Minister Briceño, before he came into office, spoke very often about Belize being too reliant on tourism as our main economic driver. And the conversation pre-election was all about diversification, and even to a certain extent after. But now we're back here. Everyone is looking at tourism as kind of a salvation to get us out of this.
Well, because it's a low-hanging fruit, right? So you open the airport, you open the borders, transportation is there, you have pent-up demand, you have people who have more money now because they've been able to save over time. And so I believe that the figure that I read somewhere is that the average American only had like $300 in their bank account pre-COVID. Now that has gone up closer to $1,000 or $1,900 or something like that. And so you have people with a little bit more money wanting to get out, experience the world. And Belize offers a product that gives you natural physical distancing and social distancing and whatever you need. It's a very safe environment right now in terms of COVID, and the numbers are low. I think we have 16 active cases right now, which is pretty low.
16 new cases.
New cases, new cases. And so we're ready to do business now. If you plant something, it will take 6 months, 8 months, a year, 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is, for you to say, all right, this can turn into an export a product. The same thing, if you decide to get into some manufacturing, it'll take some time for you to build a factory, for it to begin to work, and for you to export what you're producing. And so tourism is truly the low-hanging fruit. Tourism, we've been ready for it for some time now, and we're getting more ready. But it is what it is, no? That the industry is there, and we have an extremely wonderful product here. We have a diverse people, and we're ready to do business and getting more ready.
I mean, you sound very optimistic, and when you look at what 2021 has to offer, originally I think projections were that it would take 2 years for us to get to pre-COVID levels.
They're still saying about 3 years.
Yeah. So what's your prediction?
I think that going into next year, if there are no new variants, that there is no outbreak of any new virus, if everything plays out how we hope it could go or should go, then I believe somewhere to the end of next year we'll be seeing numbers back to where they used to be.
So you feel it'll be 2 years instead of 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't want us to run out of time without touching
No,
other part.
No, scale is important, right? When you look at those things. So if I have to get back to 500,000 in overnight arrivals as a destination for Belize, it's easier for me to get back there compared to, say, a Cuba, just for example, that may need 4 million to get there, right? So just scale is important. It's easier for us to get to 500,000 and Cuba getting ready to greet to 4 million or 5 million people, whatever they get.
Let me just shift for a moment to your the other portion of your portfolio, diaspora relations, another very critical area.
Yeah.
You know, I think we really underestimate the level of interest that Belizeans who live abroad have in this country. We know many of them are faithful to watching the show as well, and they have the remittances that people live off in this country. I mean, this is all coming from family members and Belizeans who live outside the country. So it's a significant portion of what keeps us going.
It's a significant portion of GDP.
Yeah. So what is your plan, since this is a newly established portion of your portfolio, in being able to build and capitalize on that?
Well, what we're doing right now is setting up the unit, which will be within the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, within the ministry itself for now, until we can build it and grow it. And so that's the first part of the business. We're working on a plan to reach out to those people in the diaspora. And diaspora people who have Belizean passports could be people who are born here, living outside, and their parents were born here and moved away, or people who acquired passport over the years, right? Yeah. And so it's a big market all over the world. You have people in the Middle East, people in China, people all over the world. So as I understand it, there has never been a targeted approach of reaching out to those people, and we want to do so. We believe that it is an important market for us in the tourism industry. We believe, since they have an affinity, a connection, a love for Belize, that if we create the marketing programs and the campaigns here locally, they would be interested to come to Belize first rather than going anywhere else. Even in terms of giving back their time, you have many Belizeans around the world who are doctors, engineers, and teachers who can help build this nation, and we want to reach out to those people and say, at some point, come home, help us. We want your experience, we want your skills, we want your love for this country to be invested here.
Have you done, I mean, are we going to move to the point where we get the actual numbers as to the number of Belizeans living beyond our borders?
Well, I have been unable to get that number.
There's been none, yeah.
Right, so there are talks that maybe the same number of people who live in Belize live outside. I don't know. You hear numbers from 200 to 400,000, maybe even 500,000 people living. But so hopefully, what I want to do is create a website where people can register as being a Belizean, and there are going to be some checks and balances that they'll have to go through, obviously, for them to qualify. Yeah,
and you spoke of it, the other aspect, because while we don't quantify how many people live beyond our borders, but we do quantify how much they contribute back, and remittances is one part of it, but they're also a big part of your marketing product for tourism as well. When they come home, take their families to resorts,
that's right,
and post it online. But the other aspect is...
And you know what? Word of mouth is also critical, because when I drill down into the numbers and you find where people are coming from, a lot of times when you really drill down into the number, you find that they're coming from communities where you have big Belizean population, right, in that area.
I'm sure the people from the diaspora watching are happy to hear you acknowledge that, because it is a critical part, but it's also the skills and expertise. So beyond tourism, you pointed it out, we have some extremely qualified, accomplished Belizeans
Yeah.
who are very willing to help, but don't know how or don't have perhaps the connections to be able to find out how they can help. Is that also what you see happening with diaspora relations?
Yes, the unit, as long as it's set up to its full capacity, will be reaching out to these people as much as possible. You know, there are always business Belizean associations and different business associations in the bigger urban centers that try to reach back to Belize, or we reach out to through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the embassies. And so we want to connect to those people and say, let's talk. You want to come home to Belize, you want to invest. We believe that, and there are a lot of Belizeans who have gone away and come back and invest in nice resorts from the tourism sector or some other sort of business. So they can play an important role in the rebounding and rebuilding of Belize.
Now, your administration has 5 years, and the recovery, and I think you call it recovery and stabilization, that you're estimating takes us to 2 years in. What's your ultimate goal? What's the impact you want to make on tourism?
Well, the first impact is that we want an industry that is sustainable, that respects and preserves the natural environment and the human resources that we have. But we want to see Belizeans invest more. We want to see Belizeans owning a lion's share of the industry. But we want to get back to 500,000 in overnight and 1.1 million in cruise. But we want to reach maybe 1 million or 750,000 in overnight. So you have to set your goals, and that's what we're looking at. How do we get back to those numbers, but in a sustainable way? Now, the industry, like I said earlier, we have, when you listen to Australia, the world's largest barrier reef, we know flex enough. We have the second largest, we know.
With the largest living.
But the largest living, right? We know push out with chest and say that enough. Even though almost 85% of the people who come to Belize come for some marine activity. We don't say that enough. Now I'm telling the people at the BTB in the ministry and diaspora relations, flex. Whatever we do, mediocrity will not be an option under my watch. Whatever we do, we want to be ranked in top tier of destination. So, for example, I was talking to the minister responsible for civil aviation. I said, well, I was at the BTB many years ago, private aircraft owners complain about coming to Belize. We need to do something about that sector. So he did a quick analysis for me. He said, the Bahamas, it takes 28 minutes for you to fly in there, but it takes 2 hours and 26 minutes to fly into Belize. Why? Our goal is to now get...
Because we don't have a system set up to accommodate private planes that come in.
I did another analysis the other day, charter yachts, charter yachting into Belize, or sailing into Belize, or cruising into Belize, whatever the smaller boats. Compared to every other destination, we were 2 times as expensive. That's another problem. And so we have to be competitive, but we have to be operating at a high level for us to be, for us to really see the rewards that we expect from the industry.
What about building other destinations within the country? We always talk of all the other districts that don't get enough attention.
Well, what I have done is to tell the good folks at the BTB and the ministry to look at Belize in its entirety. North and Burgess, I think, is an opportunity for us to get it right. The infrastructure is still lagging behind. Have you ever driven to Secret Beach?
Yeah.
It's not a...
Yeah.
That's not a...
The Secret Beach pop up on the radar, in the past 3-4 years?
Right?
Yeah.
But it's...
And look at how much it's grown.
How much it has grown. But the experience isn't getting there isn't that great, right? The same thing that the developments are now happening on North Kikaka. We need to get it right. The other day when I went out there, I saw this monstrous, ugly, high-rise building in Kikaka that the community was complaining about. I don't think you can do that. But that building is, or that property is affiliated to the former minister, and so that it was allowed to go through. It takes away from the aesthetics of Kikaka, the beauty of, so you have all these massive, high-rise, ugly buildings that are being built now that take away from the aesthetics of the island, the beauty of the island. So I think we need proper zoning, and we say here, North Hamburg, North Kikaka, South, wherever it is, and we say this is what we want in those areas, this is what works here, this is what works there, and we find investors, whether local or international, who would meet those requirements and put their money in.
Another key aspect is the ease of doing business.
Right. I don't know if you read my mind or what. You have some inside information from the people.
Oh, I have many conversations every day.
Okay, but I have asked for a thorough review of the ease of doing business in Belize. I got that report on my desk last week. I read it last night. And if you go to the World Bank and look at their website, the ease of doing business, I think we're ranked number 147 for doing business overall. And then
we feel that way in Belize. So imagine somebody who's coming from a different environment.
So the Prime Minister has given me that task to look at Belize in its entirety for the ease of doing business, and for us to move up the ranking from 147 overall and 166 to start a business to as high as we can go. So breaking down the barriers, the bureaucracies, and to a certain extent, a lot of it hinges on corruption in the system. Pay this one, pay that one, pay that one to do work. If you want in the past, if you want a birth paper, you had to pay for it. If you have special operative in the past in the Ministry of Lands who could process things for you quickly because they're well connected. All of these things are a part of doing business, and we have to change that. We have everything. You show me another destination in this world where you have the largest living barrier reef, 3 of the 4 atolls, archaeological sites, dense rainforest, massive amount of cave systems that we have, a diverse people in 8,867 square miles.
Preserved cultural communities.
That's right, and the list goes on. You show me another destination in this world, rich natural resources, and when we want, we have a labor force that can work hard.
Minister, I think that we have just about run out of time for this morning's conversation. So we want to thank you for coming in once again and sharing some of your views and giving us some of the updates into both of your portfolios. So thank you once again for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me. I just want to get warm up, you know.
Well, you know, I was about to say, this is only our first interview with you. We expect to have you back as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Trust me, we're doing the right things in the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, which includes the BTB, the Board of Management Authority. Tourism will rebound. It will become stronger. It will become more robust. And like the Prime Minister, the now Prime Minister says, we don't want tourism to come down. You know, we want to grow tourism, but we want to grow the other industries as well, and so that we're not as reliant on tourism. 40% of GDPs, I believe, too much for a destination or a country like Belize, the size of Belize. So we're putting in place all the systems, the structures, the new marketing strategies that will help us rebound, and that will help us get back to 500,000 in overnight arrivals and 1.1 million in cruise. We believe that we can do better with those numbers.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, and of course, continue to stay safe.
All right, thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about vaccinations and answering some of the questions about the concerns you have. So please, stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite VoIP calling plan. We use it inter-branch, we use it to call outside, and we also use it to call international. It's far cheaper than what we used to have before. Our equipment are new, PBX box is new. So the PBX is very good because I can call to my Sartaneja branch, I can call to my Kikaka branch, I can call to San Pedro branch, and there's no cost using the PBS. Actually right now, since we're in different locations, I can call main office from where I am at a no cost using the PBX system. I would recommend it, sure I would, especially the big enterprises who has a lot of employees. There's a lot of reduction in costs, 50% of saving. But that on a year, it's a lot of money that we're saving. Money that we could return to our members, since we give back dividend to our members.
Visit our showroom or call 670-6710 to find out how Smart's corporate plan and PBX systems can benefit your business. Consultation is free.
And we are back. And if you're joining us right now, we are getting our second conversation for this morning started, and we are shifting gears, and we are going to be speaking about the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines. And we are specifically going to be talking about a lot of misinformation that has been going around, how to sort through that and make the best decisions, and get educated a bit about the COVID-19 vaccine. And joining us for this conversation, we have Dr. Johan White, who is an immunologist. Good morning, doctor.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Belize. All the way from Kingston, Jamaica. Very good to be connected. I've met some beautiful Belizeans. Always happy to meet people from across the Caribbean. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. You know, we are glad to have you, and especially to talk about such an important topic. Now, it has been a few months since the rollout of the vaccine internationally, and Belize, of course, has started our own campaign with just under a currently about 30,000 people vaccinated so far. But even with that said, there is a lot of skepticism in the community, and I'm sure you've experienced that where you are as well. So let's start talking about that, about the sources of that skepticism, and what that must be like for you as a medical professional to hear.
Yeah, it's a very important conversation.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just say that we're really, really fortunate to have vaccines available to help us in getting out of this pandemic. People are dying every day, and we're hearing heartbreaking stories. It's not just individuals with pre-existing medical conditions. There are young people, elderly people, people with pre-existing conditions, people with no pre-existing conditions who are getting ill from COVID-19 and who are dying. Some of the stories are really, all of the stories are heartbreaking, and many of them are still very surprising, including young people. We are not out of the woods as yet, but vaccines are definitely a welcome tool. A vaccine really is just a small part or a harmless version of a germ that you introduce into the body with the objective of training your body to see that germ and to put up a fight against that germ the next time you come in contact with it. That's really what a vaccine is. We will not be able to vaccinate every single person on day one. And so maybe over a period of a year or so, there will be a significant proportion of the population who will not have access to a vaccine. And as such, during that time, it's really important to maintain hygiene practices and infection prevention measures like covering your cough, physical distancing of 6 feet, washing your hands often, and wearing a mask all the time, staying home if ill, and avoiding crowded situations.
Yeah.
It'll be important to do that. Now, with regards to vaccines and anything in health and medicine, gone are the days when you could just dictate to patients what to do, and you give them a medication or a prescription and you say, take this, and you get no questions. Those days are gone. And I think as a medical profession, we have to become open to the idea of engaging our clients and addressing their concerns. If they have questions, quite often, or all the time nearly, these issues can be addressed through a simple conversation, just listening to your clients' concerns, exploring their own ideas and thoughts about vaccines or any other medical issue, and just being very frank with them about the potential risks and benefits, and help them to make that decision as to whether vaccination is right for them. And people really do have concerns. There are several red flags and warning signs that we've seen as we've been rolling out vaccination over the previous weeks, and we really need to just listen to our patients and address them. And they usually do arrive at a decision that is right for them.
I want to get to some of those concerns, but before we do, just to set the backdrop, the Caribbean Vulnerable Communities, CVC, which has put out this vaccine education to help people understand more about how vaccines work. You have quite a bit of experience in kind of ensuring that myths and misconceptions are clarified, because this particular group has worked extensively in HIV education. Very early in the pandemic, many health professionals likened the COVID fears and concerns to what was previously the situation with HIV. In other words, we didn't know enough about it, so we had a lot of fears and we had a lot of concerns. As we roll into this phase of vaccination, how do you use the experience of educating people on HIV to help people understand vaccinations and the importance of getting vaccinated?
Yes, that's a very important point. The HIV experience and infrastructure across public health systems in the Caribbean has come to assist us significantly in countering this pandemic. You mentioned dealing with stigma initially and still today. There is some amount of stigma negativity towards persons suspected of having COVID-19 or the virus, severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2 or SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID-19 disease. So when persons are suspected of having this condition in communities, initially, especially in early days of the pandemic, we heard of stories where persons were experiencing discrimination, wanting to be chased out of communities or being separated from individuals. And so sometimes it was also challenging for healthcare workers to go in and provide assistance or provide testing. Fortunately, the education has helped to decrease that because people do realize that we are all vulnerable to COVID-19. And today it may be your neighbor, tomorrow it really could be you. But in addition to that, the scientific infrastructure in terms of vaccines research and vaccines development, other public health measures like contact tracing, all those technologies and approaches were very strong measures that were brought into place by HIV prevention and HIV treatment and public health responses. So those infrastructure and experience have come to really assist us, not just scientifically in the laboratory and in public health, but also in countering stigma as well.
Yeah. Dr. White, people are very, I mean, there are the early uptakes. So people who have been paying attention to the science and they're eager to get their vaccination. But then there's some who are really concerned about potential side effects. We see reports now of Johnson & Johnson vaccination rollout in some countries being put on pause to investigate possible side effects. We heard the same with AstraZeneca. And naturally, people start to say, well, what if that happens to me? How do you help people to put it into context?
Very important question. Nearly every day I have this conversation with patients of my own, but also colleagues, right? Because colleagues are sometimes patients too, and we also do have concerns. I must commend the public health infrastructure that we have and the pharmacovigilance infrastructure. In other words, there are systems in place to pick up when something goes wrong. All right? That is very, very important. So if there's one incident of a blood clot in somebody who has received the vaccine and the system is capturing it, that is a good thing because it allows us to stop, to pause, to do a thorough investigation and to make a decision in terms of going forward and weighing the risks and benefits. And usually when I have a conversation with a client or a colleague, we discuss risks and we discuss benefits. We discuss the risk of contracting the virus that causes COVID-19 and your own health condition. You know, we do know that not only persons with pre-existing medical conditions may have severe COVID-19 or succumb to the virus, but we ask about those conditions because it does increase the risk above other persons, right? So we ask about, you know, do you have diabetes, sugar? Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have heart failure, a history of heart failure? Do you have kidney failure? Do you have autoimmune conditions? Are you on medications that suppress your immune system? Are you an asthmatic? So we look at those risks and vulnerabilities and we explore, well, what's going to happen to me if I get this COVID-19, right? I could end up in an intensive care unit. I could die. If I become infected, I could pass it on to a loved one, my elderly mom or grandma, grandparents, somebody who is vulnerable in the household, my co-workers. So what is the risk to me and my loved ones and contacts if I get COVID-19? That's one part of the conversation. And then we talk about what is the risk from becoming vaccinated or from getting the vaccine. You know, there are side effects that may be, you know, considered mild, for example, like having a mild fever or feeling achy or tired or having a headache. When I was vaccinated, I had a headache that just would not go. I was there for about 3 days. I had a sore arm. But then after about 3 days or so, I felt better. So you weigh those minor effects. And then there are the major adverse reactions that are possible. For example, with the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, there was an observation of severe allergic or anaphylactic type reactions to those vaccines. And we were able to, or the regulatory agencies were able to investigate and put out an advisory that if you have a history of allergic reactions to any components of these vaccines, or just a history of severe anaphylactic reactions to anything, which you can be allergic to anything. You can be allergic to peanuts, to almonds, to perfumes, to lotion, to soap, to anything, right? Even to Panadol, right? So if you've had a history of anaphylaxis, then probably getting something that's associated, possibly even remotely linked with anaphylactic reactions would be advised against, right? So there's all of weighing your personal risk and your individual risk and situation and risk to your loved ones with the possibility or possible outcomes of getting infected and having COVID-19 versus the probability of, or the likelihood of, relatively minor side effects from immunization, and then the rare adverse effects that are concerning, yes, but in the case of anaphylactic reactions, there is a well-described medical approach to treating somebody who has a severe allergic reaction, and to date, no one, as far as I recall, has died from an anaphylactic reaction to a Pfizer or Moderna or one of the COVID-19 vaccines. With respect to the blood clots, that is a really important development that needs to be monitored carefully, and public health agencies, drug companies, physicians, healthcare workers need to be very frank with patients and very open to having that discussion. Do recall that COVID-19 itself may be associated with abnormalities in blood clotting, and persons have had heart attacks, strokes, deep vein thromboses, and sometimes you're on the way up in terms of recovering from an infection, and suddenly you have a clot because of an abnormality in your clotting, blood clotting, because of natural infection with the virus that causes COVID-19, right? And then there is the vaccine, AstraZeneca and Janssen, Johnson & Johnson in particular, that have been, it seems, associated with abnormalities in blood clotting, especially if you have a history of low platelet counts, right? For AstraZeneca, there have been just over 200 documented cases of blood clotting in persons who have been vaccinated, and for Johnson & Johnson, about 6 cases out of 6.8 million doses or recipients of those vaccines. So you weigh those probabilities and you weigh your own risk, and you help patients to arrive at a decision as to whether these vaccines are right for them.
But then when you say, and this is where we see the news coverage being very clear about an extremely rare or a very rare side effects. You said, for example, 6 out of 6 million in the case of Johnson & Johnson. I mean, even one case, it makes people feel that they move towards a generalization that it's all people who get the vaccine may suffer the consequences. What are your suggestions as how to help people put that into perspective? 6 out of 6 million in the case of Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, it really, well, there are two things. One is at the individual level, in that individual conversation one-on-one with a patient, and that you go back to weighing your own risks. What is the risk to me of becoming infected and having COVID-19, right? We know that 1 out of every 270 or 1 out of every 300 persons die on becoming infected and developing COVID-19, right? So you have to weigh that probability. And then about 1 in 5 or so develop severe COVID-19. And the thing with severe COVID-19 is that you may have long COVID symptoms. So we don't actually, in those situations, return to our normal lung function and body functions, and there may be some sequelae or some long-term complications that we don't yet fully understand. So what is the risk of that? What is what's going to happen to me if I get COVID-19? Think about that, and then think about the benefit of vaccination in that you're more likely to be protected from infection, and you're likely to reduce, although it's not perfectly eliminated, but you reduce your risk of becoming infected and passing it on to another person who could possibly be your loved one or family member. But at the individual level, at a public health level, as a Caribbean response, I think we need to ensure that we diversify our options and offerings in terms of the vaccines that we're delivering to our citizens. Very early on in the pandemic, I think a lot of our public health ministries and health ministries deferred the decision on vaccines to the World Health Organization, which is a large organization with very complex processes needing to arrive at approvals for different vaccine candidates. But in our Caribbean citizenry, we have highly competent physicians and scientists, many of whom have populated research laboratories in developed countries for years. Many of the postdoctoral research fellows and scientists in some of these drug company laboratories and research institutions are from the Caribbean, and we have people who can sit around a table or a virtual forum and analyze the data and look at the possible candidates and start putting procurement measures in place to say, okay, the AstraZeneca vaccine looks beneficial, this is a safety profile. Pfizer looks beneficial, this is the safety profile. Moderna looks this way, Sputnik looks this way, Sinovac, etc. And to start putting measures in place to try to say, how can I get this to me and to my people in the event that it is approved or it performs well in certain populations across the world. I think in many instances we miss that boat, and then we have limited options in what we can avail to our citizens. So if indeed there is a significant problem with AstraZeneca vaccines or Johnson & Johnson, and we have to stop, although that seems unlikely, but the data is still emerging, what will be your options? Some of the Caribbean islands do have other candidates, but some of us do not. Right?
What's the case in Jamaica? You have what? You only have AstraZeneca from COVAX, right?
As far as I'm aware, there is AstraZeneca on the ground, and it may or may not be from COVAX. In fact, the first shipment, as I understand it, was a gift from the Indian government.
Oh, you're right.
So it's multiple sides of the conversation. There's the individual level in terms of your own risk profile and potential benefits of vaccination, but at the public health and national response levels, it's really important that we have options for our citizens because things do change and things can change.
I think that also can bring up another topic on this subject of misinformation about the vaccine. I think one of the other things that has been misunderstood is also the effectiveness of the different vaccines. And, when we hear sort of, this one is 90%, this one is 60%. First of all, what does that mean? And second of all, any percentage, what does it mean? I think a lot of people don't understand. And the different, the varying between the different vaccines that are available, what that means as well.
That's an excellent question. One thing we're absolutely sure, or relatively sure about with COVID-19 is that one person infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus tends to pass it on to between 2 and 3 other persons. So on average, actually 2.4, right? That's a number that we call the reproductive number. That number is instrumental in determining what the minimum level of your population is that needs to be immunized or protected in order to stop propagation or multiplication of the infection in your population, right? There's a formula approach that we use, and that number, the reproductive number of 2.4, tells us that you need to vaccinate about between 60 and right. It is better than no vaccine at all because you have people dying every day, right? The higher the protective efficacy, of course, the better it is. But very early on, international agencies determined that if you have a vaccine that is at least 50% effective, then regulatory agencies could evaluate and accept and approve that for emergency use. So far, many of the vaccines are 95%, 60%, 70%, very good levels, which is welcome. So that's how we arrive at the conversation or terms like herd immunity and the minimum proportion of your population that needs to be immunized. But I do have one comment regarding a very, very common question about safety of the vaccines, and that's the pace at which they were developed, right? People feel like, okay, you spent like a few months just developing these vaccines. There's no way on earth that could be safe because conventionally we've spent 10 years to try to get one vaccine candidate. Now, what I will say to that is that the mRNA technology actually has allowed us to bypass many of the steps that we would have used, for example, in developing conventional vaccines like against the flu. For the flu vaccines in particular, we've had to grow up the influenza virus, the influenza that causes flu, in eggs, right? In the covering of eggs. That means you have to find chickens, they have to be healthy. You have to find eggs, the eggs have to be healthy. You have to have space to store them and store them in a proper condition, and then you grow up the virus in the covering. You have to retrieve the virus, you have to inactivate them, you have to bottle them and have them available for clinical trials and then vaccination. With the mRNA vaccine, what you do is actually use a small part of the genetic code of the virus, not even from the actual virus itself. We can actually make it in the laboratory. And your genetic code is basically what determines what you look like. So for us, if you have your mother's genes, for example, if you have your mother's nose, we say you get your genes from your mother, and that's why your nose looks like your mom's nose. So similarly for the virus, the mRNA or the genetic material of the virus determines the structure of the virus. And one of the most important structures of the virus is the spike protein. So you must have heard about the spike protein. So it sticks off the surface of the circular virus. And because it's sticking off, it's the first thing that your immune system actually sees, right? And so if your body can see this and recognize it and generate what we call antibodies or substances to fight it, then you can bind to the spike proteins of the virus and carry it away. So the mRNA vaccines actually allow your body to make just the spike protein, release it in your body, and your body then mounts antibodies. And so you're trained to see the spikes. So next time you actually encounter the virus, which will have the
body
spike,
knows how to respond.
Right, your body actually already knows how to respond.
Yeah.
And with the mRNA technology, it has allowed us to bypass many of the stages and bottlenecks that we've experienced with the development of vaccines like the flu vaccine. And that's the reason we were able to get a vaccine so quickly. But these vaccines have been in clinical trials that have seen tens of thousands of people. Unfortunately, Caribbean countries were not featured majorly as clinical sites, right? Because we need planning and infrastructure and leadership for that. So for the next pandemic preparedness, because something like that, participating in international clinical trials actually helps us to have ownership of these vaccines that are developed, similar to how we did with the rotavirus vaccine in Jamaica. So for future pandemics, because pandemics will happen, epidemics will come, and we have to make sure that we learn from this experience and that we are prepared. So that timeline about mRNA vaccines is one of the major things that's on people's mind. How did we get to this so quickly, and is it safe?
It's true, and it's been a challenge because there's so much information that we all need to absorb in such a short time, from what we learned about the disease itself, thinking first it was just respiratory, realizing it was systemic, knowing that there were long-term effects, the asymptomatic portion, the vaccine development, the simultaneous testing that took place. It's a lot of information. And now, one of the things that we know is the variants. And there's a lot of concerns about, you know, in plain thinking, we don't know much about science. You created something for a first disease, now there's a new version. So the assumption is it won't work on the new version. What is the actual effectiveness of the existing vaccines on the new variants and possible emerging variants?
Yes, excellent question. And there's something that's making us nervous as physicians and scientists in that when you compare the immune response to the original vaccines that were developed with original strains, they tend to be less effective against the newer variants that are coming about. Sometimes it is mildly or moderately less effective, and sometimes it is significantly less effective. The good news is that with mRNA vaccines, you can easily go back to the laboratory and adjust and have a vaccine that matches the new variant. However, it is concerning because that means you can have breakthrough infections. In other words, you're vaccinated, but if you're not protected against the variant strains, then these variant strains could possibly, theoretically, take over and then establish a new pandemic, right? Yeah. Which is why it's really so important to still maintain all the non-pharmaceutical strategies or the infection prevention strategies that we do. But it's really a valid concern. But you know, with viruses, that's what they do. They change as they multiply, as they grow. Yeah. And as they do that, there are strains that will find it advantageous to maintain that change in that they may jump from one person to the next more easily, so you get a transmission benefit. However, there's usually a cost to the virus for taking on a new advantage. In other words, the disease may not be as severe sometimes, although we're seeing the contrary for some variants, or the disease course may not last as long. So usually there is a cost to the virus for picking up a new trait that allows it either to be transmitted more easily or some other benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I think the key part is, and just to get your closing thoughts here, the vaccines are there. They've been tested. You must consult with your doctor and get some kind of, especially if you have health concerns already, but that we should feel confident in being able to take them. And secondly, ensuring that we're maintaining all the health protocols as well, mask, distance, hand washing.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, that's exactly how I would summarize, actually. Yeah. We are not out of the woods as yet, and it's really important to maintain those infection prevention measures. Hand washing, mask wearing, physical distancing, avoiding crowded situations. Yeah. Think about your own risk, your own health status. Think about the health of your loved ones. Think about the risk of actually getting COVID-19. You really don't want to take the chance. Yeah. You don't want to gamble in that way because we're not able to predict who will do well and who will succumb to this virus or have severe complications like strokes, heart attacks, blood clots, etc. And think about the benefits of vaccination. Yeah. Think about the relatively mild side effects that may occur and the rare events that may occur. But also, fortunately, we have a pharmacovigilance system worldwide that allows us to pick up when something is wrong. So I'd encourage persons to have confidence in that system and also to communicate with your family physicians and your healthcare providers. If you don't feel well after vaccination and it's persisting beyond 2 days or so, you know, pick up the phone because there's a system for reporting adverse events to vaccines so that we can know what's happening and so that we can investigate. So I'd say have some confidence in that system. Regulators are on the lookout because there's so many concerns from our citizens worldwide. And so, you know, everything is under the microscope. So if you do report an issue, more than likely it will be investigated. So, you know, that should be reassuring for individuals. And just to say that you know, we're glad for the arrival of vaccines, but I believe we do have some way to go, especially since not everybody will be able to access vaccination in the first instance.
All right. Well, thank you so much for weighing in on this with us this morning. Thank you to you, Dr. White, and of course to the Caribbean vulnerable communities for helping to share information with our viewers. Continue to stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Nice talking with both of you.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to get the details of a walk to support the Belize Brain Awareness Community. So please stay tuned.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. Stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country. Your bank.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware of the new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangrega, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott rapid test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Why, Tony?
Boy, kid, where you going, man?
I'm actually going to see you because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just routed the last batch, must be about like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have that thing? What are you going?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell there. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
And we are back. And if you're joining us now, we are getting our third and final conversation for this morning started. And once again, we are shifting gears and we are going to be speaking about an event, walk or run actually, that is being held with the aim to raise awareness for several different types of brain disorders and conditions. And joining us for this conversation, we have Kayla Nunez, who is the founder of the Belize Brain Awareness Society. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, sir.
All right.
And good morning, Miss Malene.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us. Of course, we're very interested to hear about this topic, and it's one that's very important and needs needs a lot of attention. Probably not as much as it is given. So before we actually talk about the event, why don't we speak about the Belize Brain Awareness Society, how it is that came about, and what you hope to what you hope to accomplish.
Okay then, well, the Brain Society came about from myself. I had 2 brain aneurysm, and I also had I also did 2 brain surgeries. So I was looking for an avenue or an outlet, you would say, for myself to go to and find out some information. But I had none of that. I only had Google, and I also had my neurologist. What I then did was I went on a hunt for myself to make sure that I get well, so that I can then help other people who was in that same disarray, such as myself and my family, because we were all lost about the illness. I only heard about aneurysm the first time I got it. So I wanted to bring awareness about the brain. I was told that the brain is such a large body. So it is really a large body. We cover over 60 brain disorders and brain disease. It is split in 3 categories. The first one is neurological. That's whereby anything physically takes place with the brain. The second one is mental. That's when the mental capacity of the brain gets disrupted, such as with depression and anxiety. And the third one is learning disabilities. That's whereby we bring in the autism, the ADHD, and all the different learning abilities that we find in classrooms. So that's whereby our organization covered 3 of those aspects.
Okay. Now you've been going for quite a bit of time now, and I know you've helped people to understand more about brain disorders, people who live with epilepsy, or they face some other, whether it was an injury that to the brain or something that they were born with. How have you found the reception to the level of understanding and the education that you put forward?
Well, the reception, sometimes it goes a little bit slow, but when I realize when someone who gets really ill that we put out there on our social media page, then they're like, oh, this thing is really serious. And
Yeah.
it is actually there. And what's so funny about the brain is that no one sees. And I always say that no one sees. And my mom didn't know I was sick from I was young. You won't know if you have a brain tumor.
No.
You know,
until it gets big enough to affect other sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then no one will sit down and say, well, I think I need to go and do a brain CAT scan.
Yeah.
And I think I need to do an MRI. Or I think I need to do X, Y, and Z. Until when these things get so large or they get erupted, and then we run. And then that was what took place with me. And I can say my results have been remarkable in a sense that I still go through my own process, but in a sense that I can get up to educate other people that just don't wait. So what we have is a month, I believe in June, whereby we just focus on headaches, because it all starts from headaches. And this is whereby a lot of people are actually losing focus, that if you're getting constant headaches, this is how it starts. Your body's telling you something. And some of the headaches are very simple. They have different types of headaches, but we think that, oh, just take a Tylenol and it's finished. But I had headaches really terrible from the age of 6. I had headaches really terrible in classes.
Yeah.
I had it really bad, and my mom and myself, we look at it like it was nothing.
Yeah.
But when I got 25 and then it ruptured in my head, then the doctor said in Cuba, I said, well, miss, the headaches were telling you something.
Yeah.
And that's where
and you would have never thought about it. Yeah.
Yes. It's not just headaches. It's headaches that are telling you something. Your body cannot speak to you. So what it does is that it explains certain things that is taking place within your system. Now, the brain is a control system. So when you do fall, it allows you to stop your movements, your eye gets affected, and all these different things. Like I couldn't have seen, walk, or talk for a moment. And that's what I want to bring across to the public, that it's very, very important
to pay attention to these signs.
Really,
Kayla,
really
so
important.
tell us about the walk this Saturday. You're inviting people to participate so that you can keep this awareness going.
Well, we have many different illnesses within our camp. We support them medically, such as we either pay the hospital, we either do some grocery hampers, and all these different things. As you do know, many of our cases are neurologically disabled. So our walk is for us to spread awareness for all these different illnesses that is underneath our camp. With syndrome, Ohtahara syndrome, we have autism, we have ADHD, we have myself aneurysm. You also have epileptic. We have a lot of these cases. You have cerebral atrophy. You have microcephaly.
Yeah.
And you have all these cases that people are not really looking at. And we need to spread the awareness that it's out there. That's a little girl with Ohtahara syndrome. Ohtahara syndrome is very rare in Belize. Yeah. So people are not really aware of these things. That's seizure from the womb, and it affects infants.
So you help financially with these, with people who need special checkups or medication or treatments.
Yes, ma'am.
And
yes, ma'am.
by people participating in your events, like the walk this weekend, they are helping these people as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What we have is some, I am very hands-on. You may see me behind the scenes, but I'm very hands-on. All my members can tell you I call them.
Yeah.
And I make sure I know the doctor appointments. Yeah. It's like I'm their mama bear. I make sure that I know their doctor's appointments. I know that Anival, who has West syndrome, needs to go and see Dr. Sosa. So that is what I work towards. Yeah. I know X, Y, and Z needs to get a brain CAT scan. I make sure that I am calling their name because they're okay with it. They're in the program that we have called It Takes a Village. I know that baby Nyla needs to do a brain CAT scan. You know, I also know that baby sorry with the Ohtahara syndrome, she needs to get an MRI done. So what I do is that I work these things towards helping them. And then we would pay it into the hospital, the health institution that hosts them, or we would simply give it to the parents, and we have a breakdown of those things. We also do medication assistance. Because the medication is so hard to get, we make sure that we link with a pharmacy that is a wholesaler that brings in these medication for us, and we get it for them. And so our donation letters is constantly. Constantly.
Well, we do hope people come out to support the walk. So tell us the details about the event. It takes place this Saturday.
Yes, ma'am. It takes place this Saturday. It starts from BTL Park. BTL Park in Belize City. And it will be hosted by Miss Karen Rosito. I love what she's doing. She actually is trying to help these organizations to orchestrate these activities to spread awareness. And so she's asking if we have shirts, if we have these promotional items, bring out this one to support, bring out these businesses, and so that we can spread more awareness when it comes to this matter. And I really appreciate what she's trying to do, as we really do need others to know of these illnesses that is out there. And you know that when it comes to the brain, it's one of the most expensive healthcare that is out there, as we have limited neurologists and limited neurosurgeons. So what we have to do, what we try to do, is to spread the awareness so that it limits in the country the amount of people that starts to get extremely ill and will need these same people that we have limitations on in this country.
All right. Well, Kalia, we thank you so much for telling us about Belize Brain Awareness Society. We know that you have started this group with a passion from your own experience, and we do hope that people come on out and support on Saturday as well. All the best and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marlene. Have a blessed day, guys, and be safe.
All right. And remember that you can find Belize Brain Awareness Society on Facebook as well, where you can get all the details on how you can donate if you can't make it out to the walk and show your support. With that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be closing things off for this morning.
Hola, Tony.
Hey, Kevin, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa?
Nada, le vine a buscar porque necesito comprar más mercancías de vasos y platos desechables para mi tienda de comestible. Me estoy quedando sin esas cosas.
No, hombre, fíjate que desde el 15 de abril no puedo importar nada de eso. Y se me acaba de terminar todo lo que tenía hace como 3 semanas.
Oye, pero nunca has estado sin esas cosas. ¿Qué está pasando?
Mira esto. Esta es la nueva ley que prohíbe todo el uso de plásticos no reutilizables. Esos son vasos, platos, cucharas, tenedores, todo eso. Desde 15 de abril de este año no he podido importar nada de eso. A partir del 15 de enero del 2021 nadie puede fabricarlo. 15 de abril 2021 nadie lo puede vender. Y a partir del 14 de julio del 2021 si alguien te agarra con eso, te multan.
Híjole, no sabía eso. Necesito cambiar algunas cosas. Les diré a mis clientes por qué esas cosas ya no están disponibles. Gracias, Antonio.
Así es, cuídate.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
And we're back. And we want to say thank you for tuning in today. It's been quite an extended show.
Yes.
Yeah. Covering a wide range of topics, and from looking at the state of tourism to talking more about the vaccines, and then closing off with an upcoming walk by the Belize Brain Awareness Society.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to thank our guests for coming in this morning, and we want to thank you, of course, from watching from wherever it is in the world that you are watching. And we started off our shows speaking a little bit about the situation in St. Vincent. If you missed that, there has been another eruption this morning, so our thoughts are definitely with all of the people on the island and all of the islands who are being affected currently. And we know that, of course, a natural disaster is probably the worst thing in any situation, at any time to deal with. But especially in current times, it's very difficult. So best wishes to all of them.
All right. But that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you want to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ.
And on Instagram at OIEBelize. And you can tune in tomorrow morning to Open Your Eyes.
When you start your morning right. See?
Yeah.
Wow, I finally fell victim to my own trick.
Right? It's like on autopilot. But
all right.
Until then, keep your mind, eyes,
and hearts open. We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.